Welcome to Tech Vets, the podcast, and we are joined today by Sam O'Donnell from NetCompany. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Meredith.
So, Sam, I hear that you have just returned from completing some quite interesting work.
Yeah, so I kind of took a bit of a career break. Some mobilization papers came through the door for me as a reservist, and I've just spent the last sort of 9-10 months training Ukrainians in the UK.
So, when did you leave the military, and how long have you been a reservist?
So I've always been a reservist. So I joined the reserves when I was 18. Yeah, I joined. I was going to join the regular army, but I got into college and fell into a job, and it just kind of stayed from there. I still wanted to do some sort of military service, so I joined the Army Reserves instead.
What specialism did you go into within the reservists?
So I started off in Royal Signals, but under Armed Forces 2020 restructuring, the unit was disbanded around 2009, 2010. So I actually ended up transferring to Royal Logistics Corps based in Manchester, reserve unit, where I did driver training. Became a driver, something completely different from my normal day-to-day job.
And what is your normal day-to-day job?
So I currently I'm a Microsoft 365 specialist, especially around Teams and sort of modern communications sort of thing. So I spend a lot of time in front of my desk during Monday to Friday, and then weekend out and about in the field, driving trucks or on the ranges, taking part in exercises.
So how did you get into working with Microsoft systems? What did you do at college?
So I did an IT management course at college, and truth be told, it was only to kind of please my mum at the time. I wanted to join the army at 16, to which my mum said, no, you're going to go to college first. So I went to college, kind of looked for the shortest, quickest course that I could do with the grades from school that I got. And it was an IT course. I had some interest in computers and IT, nothing spectacular, but I actually really enjoyed the course, and I kind of landed my first IT job while I was at college, and it just kind of grew from there.
So have you always worked on Microsoft systems, or is that something that you recently retrained in?
Yeah, so I was very much more on-premise infrastructure kind of thing. So servers, specifically around Microsoft Exchange, so email-related servers, and Skype for Business, or Lync as it was back then. And as technology's evolved, it's gone more cloud-focused. So wasn't really until I came to NetCompany just over 4 years ago that I focused more on the cloud sort of technologies rather than the on-premise infrastructure kind of things.
What made you join NetCompany?
So I was a contractor, self-employed for a few years, and the market was kind of drying up in the area that I wanted to work, and I could have travelled if I wanted to. I moved to other roles, but I just had my first child with my wife, and she'd have not liked it if I was away from home sort of Monday to Friday. So I was kind of looking for something a bit closer to home, and the opportunity came about. One of the in-house talent acquisition recruiters phoned me and just said, we've got this role, would you be interested in having the chat? So that's how it kind of started.
And during your time with NetCompany, have you had much opportunity to upskill or develop your existing skill set?
You kind of have to in this modern world of IT. Microsoft use the term evergreen, which is kind of everything's green all the time, everything's new. So there's constant changes, constant adoption required. So you kind of have to be up to date and keep yourself up to date with that technology as it goes along. Because if you don't, then you're going to get left behind, and you're not really effective in what you do.
When you got the signal that you were going to be mobilized, were you worried at all about how your employer NetCompany would respond?
Initially, yes, but they'd always been supportive of my reserve time anyway. So they knew I was a reservist. They'd had I was entitled to certain leave allowances as well. So they knew I was a reservist. They knew I was quite keen. And when that opportunity landed for the letterbox, I was a bit like, right, okay, this is going to happen. First port of call was to one of the partners, and I said, look, this is what's going to happen. This is you're going to receive a letter. I've got a letter, and they basically said, I said, right, fine, okay, we'll support you.
That's amazing. So how long were you out of the workplace for?
So I left sort of March, end of March last year, and I only recently returned to work sort of 22nd of January. So sometime, doing the job we were doing, it was quite full on. There wasn't much time to take leave. So come Christmas when we'd finished, it was a nice little chunk of leave to use at the end.
And how do you feel your reserve service helps with your day job?
I don't know really. I mean, I am quite used to having the confidence to sit there and speak to people, that are at sea level and other technical sort of architects and things like that. And I think maybe sort of my experiences as an instructor doing various training courses through the military has kind of given me some of that positive sort of attitude, some of that experience and the ability and confidence to stand there and have those conversations.
When you went back into the office after finishing, nearly a year off work, what was the response of your colleagues?
I kind of went back because I finished just before Christmas. Unfortunately, I didn't make it to the company Christmas party, which was a shame. But I knew that there was a few of my colleagues, they were going out for a couple of drinks sort of the week after, sort of the week before Christmas, but the week after I'd finished. So I kind of went over to the office, over to Leeds, and just had a good catch up with them, as opposed to doing it on the first formal work day, if that makes sense. So it was good to see. It was good to catch up. They were just as interested as what I was doing, and I was interested in what happened over the last sort of 10 months in the office, try to catch up on office gossip, if you will.
Do you think within that relatively short space of time in the grand scheme of things, has had any tech changed within the company? Did you have to kind of get back up to speed again?
Yeah, absolutely. I had every interest while I was away to keep looking and reading up on things, but that never happened. So when I came back, there was all sorts of things that had changed. So, for example, Active Directory and Azure Active Directory changed name, and licensing models had changed. So it was just all little things of just getting back into different terminologies, different understanding of what allows you to do what with certain licenses and all that kind of thing. So it was a bit of time to try and catch up on that. And some of my Microsoft certifications were up for renewal. So again, it was a good opportunity just to read up and go through and understand some of the changes and redo those certifications.
Have you inspired any of your colleagues to join the reserves, do you think?
I'd probably say no. I mean, they've all been very keen on what I've done, but a lot of them do like the warmth and comfort of their desk sometimes. I've started at very. I started doing the reserves when I was 18, so it was like kind of straight into it, and relatively young. So most of my colleagues probably wouldn't consider it. There might be one or two of the younger colleagues, maybe, but again, it's not everyone's cup of tea.
So were you doing a tech kind of role in your reservist job, or was it more on the logistics side?
So normally what my role would be logistics focused. However, I was actually deployed as a section commander for a training team. So I was actually involved in a lot of the training of the Ukrainians. So literally delivering infantry basic skills over a 5-week course, where it's everything from how to live in the field all the way up to live fire tactical training at the end of that. So it's quite a wide syllabus, and I needed to get qualifications and learn some things myself. But it was completely different to what my reserve role was. So different, but yeah, well worth it.
What was it like working? Were you working with Ukrainian soldiers who had already been fighting, or were you working with ones that were being prepared to fight?
It depends what region they came from. There were some people who had come from areas that had been heavily involved in the conflict, some not so much. So depending on where they come from, you had kind of had a different mentality and different attitude towards the conflict.
How did you feel before you started that mobilization about working with people who are then going to go back and fight for real? What were the emotions that were kind of going through you from the kind of start, mid to end of that mobilization?
At the beginning, it was exciting. It was kind of the unknown sort of excitement. It wasn't just working with the Ukrainians; it was working with other reservists, working with foreign teams as well. So it wasn't just British teams; we were working with other nationalities as well. So it was kind of exciting to begin with. Nervous once we got into the actual training role. Just before it started, it was kind of like, right, this is we're expecting our first group of trainees coming through. So not quite sure what to expect. I mean, we had heard some horror stories from the other training units over the last sort of 12 months. So it was kind of what we're going to get. What do we expect? What's their level of attitude going to be? Do they want to be here? Are they forced to be here? Sort of thing. So it was kind of a different range of feelings, to be honest.
How do you feel now, having completed that mobilization?
So as long as my wife doesn't hear this, I absolutely loved it. Um, you know, I really enjoyed doing the job. Interacting with the Ukrainians and getting to know them as well. It has its that in itself has its own unique feelings. The some aren't with us anymore. Some are, and we do get messages occasionally from people. So again, mix of emotions. But I really enjoyed doing it.
If the time came round again where
Mhm.
you were asked to mobilize again, would you?
Again, depends if my wife's going to hear this or not. I would. If the opportunity came up to do the same role again, then yeah, absolutely. Watching civilians effectively come through, get an initial kit issue, and then leaving after 5 weeks, 5 and a bit weeks, having achieved, you know, live fire tactical training from all the way up to pairs fire maneuver and fire teams. It was just quite rewarding to watch. So I would do that again if the opportunity did come up.
Do you feel proud of what you've achieved?
Absolutely,
It's
absolutely.
it's very commendable to kind of, I know that mobilization comes around and you don't necessarily have much choice in whether you do what you're told to do. But I think kind of the fact that you went away and did that and then have come back to NetCompany and have this, I mean, it must have changed your character to a degree. Was it the first mobilization that you'd ever done as a reservist?
Yeah, so it's my first mobilization.
And do you think your character has changed?
I mean, I did have a bit of a funny character before I left. My swearing is something to not be proud of on occasions, and that's just probably the same now. Now I'm back, but it's kind of it's just unique. It was just something that I'm just proud of doing, and my character has changed. I think living in a room with 10 blokes, with no wardrobes, no drawers, your kit's everywhere, you're working long hours, you get to know other people very well. to then having, a king size bed to yourself when you come home, and the missus and the kids have gone to work and school, and I'm sat there like, like my own space. It was so, it was just different when I finished. So,
how did your wife and children respond to you being away and coming back?
It's always been a conversation with my wife of something that I'd always wanted to do. I'd always wanted to be mobilised or have the opportunity to be mobilised. That said, I've got 2 young children. One's 7 and one's 2. Currently 7 and 2, and my eldest struggled a little bit emotionally. Struggled. My youngest just cheeky and really didn't care, but the oldest was more emotional, to the point where, if I hadn't spoken to them in a couple of days because I might have been out in the exercise area, you'd FaceTime him and he'd be in tears, sort of thing. So it does kind of play on your emotions a little bit being away from home. I think being based in the UK at the time probably was helpful. Again, there was opportunities to have quick breaks, to go home and back again. So, I think if the opportunity to mobilise again, then I think I'd hopefully assume the kids will be a bit older and understand it a bit better.
And do you find going back to work now mundane, or is it just different? Do you crave the pace of life that it was when you were mobilized? How have you managed that transition? Because I guess it's like a lot of service leavers who go from the military to say the civilian tech sector. It's a completely different environment.
Yeah, I mean, working pretty much 6 days a week, and then sort of solid 2-week chunks in between for the courses that we were delivering. It was just kind of very full on to start off with, but once you got into the routine and things, you kind of got used to it. But when I stopped, the change of pace was like, what do I do now? I've come home on leave. I mean, I did spend a couple of days in bed, catching up on Netflix and things, and just chilling out. But if I was to say it was mundane coming back to work, no, because I enjoyed what I was doing before I left. I think if I didn't enjoy it, and it was the reason why I was mobilised or I chose to mobilise or something along those lines, then I think I probably would find it mundane. But I don't. I enjoyed my job. I enjoy my job that I'm doing, and I enjoy my reserve time.
And what is it that NetCompany actually do?
It's going to put me under pressure now, isn't it? So the company are themselves kind of more involved into digital transformation, so more application development and processes and stuff like that. The area that I work on is more infrastructure sort of focused around Microsoft 365, Azure, infrastructure as a service, cloud-based technologies.
For anyone who's watching this and they want to get into a company like NetCompany or get into the tech sector, I think lots of people will listen to your experience and say, yeah, well, he went to college, he's got all these years, of course he's going to end up where he's ended up. But what would be your top tips to, say, a service leaver or a service partner who wanted to try and emulate your career path or where you are now?
Places like LinkedIn and online forums are a great place to start. I mean, they can put you into sort of areas where you can develop an interest. So depending on what your interest is, if you want to go down cloud infrastructure and stuff like that, you can look at sort of joining those online communities. I mean, TechVets has got some great stuff online as well. So I think there's a Discord server and all that kind of stuff where you can join and get all the community information on there. But depending on what area and expertise you want to go into, there's obviously different things that you can learn. I mean, if you're going to focus on Microsoft technologies, you'd want to look at sort of the fundamentals sort of training that Microsoft has online, which is free. You can go and do an exam as well. Again, that's something that we offer through NetCompany, through TechVets, some of the foundation fundamentals training as well. So you can do these fundamental stuff and you might think, well, that's not for me, but there's something else that tweaks your interest. You can always look at that as well.
The training that's provided to TechVets members from NetCompany, how does that work?
So it's done by Microsoft certified trainers. So myself and there's about 5 of us within NetCompany which are certified trainers. So we have access to the latest training material from Microsoft, and it's organised through TechVets, and it's a basically online training session. So the fundamentals ones are normally about a day long. It's training where we give you a link. You join the link on a Teams call, so you can join over the internet, and you don't need any special sort of skills to be able to do that. And you can take part in the training. Some of it is the Azure fundamentals, which is like what is Azure, how it all works together. You've got some of the Microsoft fundamentals where you learn about the different types of technologies within Microsoft, and it all just basically comes down to things, little bits of information that we share to get you into the right information, to give you the right information to start that base layer journey, and again, for you to make a decision whether or not that part's for you or for not.
And what does that, once people have done those courses, what does that set them up to go and do?
Again, the fundamentals kind of gives you the overall picture of a certain technology. So the example that the MS 900 exam gives you sort of the fundamentals overview of the whole Microsoft 365 technologies that are available. So you could then decide that you want to focus more on Microsoft Teams. So there are more exams for you to follow, more training path for you to go down. If you say focus on the Azure fundamentals, then you'll be looking at Azure infrastructure as a service, cloud-based AI, all that kind of stuff. It can be gives you the very basics for you to then build on and decide which path you want to go down.
So do you think people could realistically start applying for jobs once they've got those courses, or would it be a case of going and get more experience on top of those courses once they've done them?
I think, as with any sort of job that you apply for, you've got to have the positive attitude around it. I mean, you can't just turn up with a certificate and go, I've learned this, put me in this high paid role. It doesn't necessarily work that way. You've got to kind of have that experience to back it up. But it is a great place to start. I mean, you could find yourself working in a small little ops and support team with these certifications, and that'll be your foot in the door where you can easily develop and grow.
Looking at that kind of building experience part, because it is a bit chicken and egg, isn't it? You can't get the foot in the door before you've got the experience, you've got the experience. How would you recommend people look or make the connections to get that experience that's going to get them that first job?
It's quite a difficult one for me to answer, because I was very lucky in the way that my experience sort of came about. I mean, I started at college straight from school, and kind of fell into my first IT role working in a secondary school delivering IT, basically working as an IT engineer. Gained a lot of experience like that. That way, sort of the core understanding and basics. And then I went to go and work for a small managed service provider, where I got to work with loads of different technologies in different environments and different types of clients. So I kind of gained experience that way. And then went and got a job working for enterprise sort of sizes organizations and global infrastructure. So again, there's kind of different levels of experience that you can gain. I mean, again, it all depends on the technology area you want to move into as to how you would gain that kind of level of experience. But what I would say is that everyone takes experience differently. You've still got to have that positive sort of experience and understanding of what you want to achieve in order to get to that point.
And when you look at where you are at the moment in your career, from a Microsoft perspective, what new bits and pieces can you see on the horizon that are going to be implemented in the workplace?
The area that I kind of specialize in is around sort of Microsoft Teams and voice, and meeting and collaboration. So that's kind of the areas I work in. Seeing what AI brings to the table for voice and for meeting insights, and how people deal with information that's discussed over meetings, that's exciting. listening to how AI will decide, you said this during a meeting, but here's a reminder to say that you were going to do that, and you've not made any notes. That's just AI going, well, you said you were going to do that. This is what you need to do. So that's kind of interesting to understand how that's going to work and how that grows. And AI as a technology across the board, how that's going to grow in the future looks quite good.
Do you think it will ever have well, I think that's a stupid question to start with. Do you think it will ever? Of course it will at some stage. But can you see Microsoft Teams bringing in sentiment analysis and tone analytics so that it can, when it's listening to meetings, it can kind of give you an overview of the emotions almost of the people that are in those Teams calls?
Probably not Teams out of the box. I think any sort of companies. So we work with other companies that produce and develop sort of AI-based voice software recognition software. Like I said, so Meeting Insights for one. It can kind of understand what you're saying, and how you're saying it. So just by reading a paragraph, it knows it's a paragraph. It knows it's a sentence. It knows if you took a pause of breath. It kind of picks up sort of that human element of a conversation. Is it going to be, some sort of Skynet technology that takes over the world? Probably not in the near future. But again, it could be very scary to what it can achieve in the future. Things like chatbots, for example. You chat to, you want to cancel your Sky subscription or whatever, and you end up chatting to to a bot on their website, and the initial part of that is, a predefined set of answers, which is what AI is developed into. So, it could just be something you use every single day for a simple sort of task. It's going to grow.
Does any of the emerging technology that you're aware of concern you?
So yes and no, not particularly in my area, but if you look at technology as a whole, and you've only got to look at the conflicts that are going on around currently, and the use of drones, for example, and how people have developed drones from off-the-shelf things, used programmers and developers to change how the drones work. You see drone footage of someone's bought a £300 drone off the shelf from PC World, and they've modified it. They've changed the application on there, and they can now pick out using some sort of AI or programming. They can identify friendly and enemy troops. So it's quite clever in how that's going to happen. So it's only going to be a matter of time before it starts doing that itself. AI takes its step forward.
And do you think it will put people like you who manage Teams and Microsoft programs out of work? Do you think you're replaceable?
Everyone's replaceable, right? So I think, as I said previously, I started off on an on-premise physical infrastructure environment, and over the years I've been in IT, and you've got to evolve. So and at the minute it is evergreen. It's constantly changing. So as a techie, really, you've got to keep with that. You've got to evolve. Otherwise, you will find yourself left behind, and probably not replaceable, but probably a bit more behind the curve, and someone else could take the lead.
I think that's a really good point to wrap up on, is the importance of being able to evolve, whether it's in your role or alongside technology. But I guess also adapting to if you get mobilization papers through the door and changing your life.
Yeah.
Sam, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been fascinating to speak to you, and also quite an honor. I'm kind of
thank you,
bamboozled by what you've done over the last year in support of the efforts in helping Ukraine. So thank you very much.